Hello friends, I used to have crippling anxiety and depression, but over the last 3 years I've been really grappling with it and I've distilled down my experience into this video series. I hope in this video series you'll find all the tools you need to overcome your anxiety and depression. So please like and subscribe if you find this information useful, and leave your thoughts in the comment section below. So this chart is about addiction and depression, and I'll be sharing my experience, my process, and finally my solution for you to try. So, disclaimer, as you're probably here because you or somebody you care about has addiction or depression, it's very important to know I am not a doctor, I am just somebody who has suffered with this and would like to share my process. I care about you very much, I'm sure a lot of people around you care about you too. If you are struggling with this in any way, find a professional or a doctor to speak to. Please don't hurt yourself. So to start by clarifying, my name's Stephen. I quit alcohol and caffeine and one other thing around 12 months ago, and it hasn't been easy, but has been absolutely vital in stripping back the layers allowing me to ascertain the root cause of my depression. Check out my video on the process I followed to successfully quit drinking. That's interesting. Quitting addictive chemicals and coping mechanisms works because you get rid of that chemical and neurochemical anxiety induction in the brain. Huberman has a whole special on this, which I'll link below, which is well worth listening to. But to summarise, the addictive chemical removal works by reducing mood swings, making you calmer, less erratic and more predictable. Removing this layer allows you to communicate inwards with your resting self, making your actual intelligent thoughts and desires more accessible, rather than just that awful surface level reactionary thoughts and white noise that you get. So removing this chemical stimulus had a huge impact on my physiological energy. That is, I felt calmer and more relaxed generally, I have more energy so I don't have the horrible anxious jitters, and the conveyor belt of shitty thoughts that just goes on and on. So now, rather than having these constant shitty thoughts inducing anxiety, which over time induces an overwhelming mood of despair, which just drove my entire mindset, I was able to slow it down so I could analyse my thoughts and interrogate their assumptions, which we'll look at in more detail in a later video, because that's a really key step, actually listening to your thoughts. So instead of experiencing just a constant shitty mood, my mood became more granular and I could analyse it in much more detail, and with this I found myself experiencing a wider span of moods too. So now, rather than a constant feeling of anxiety and dread, I could feel incredibly low but also specific highs, which were not chemically induced. That's very important. And finally, a calm stillness, which after a lifetime of anxiety was a very welcome feeling. Now this mood analysis was super helpful because it allowed me to see the reason I was drinking, and it was to get into these really high states, the really great feeling addictive states, which is great, but they're actually accessible without the drugs. And I think I've worked out why. Over time, it started to appear to me that we spend our lives shuffling energy about, and we only have a set amount. So when you take addictive substances, even caffeine, you're pulling energy from the future to make yourself feel good in the moment. So when it wears off, you feel the sugar crash or the hangover, the inevitable downer, and then you just feel worse. And this is like a steady drop. So you borrow energy from the future to feel good, and then you have a drop off which feels worse. Then you borrow energy to feel good, and you have a drop off which feels worse. And you progressively get lower and lower and lower. But this works both ways too. So when you go running, or spend meaningful time with people you love, or just do an activity you enjoy, you're kind of paying energy forwards and charging yourself up. So you do feel great afterwards. Obviously there's a lot of benefits to physical activity like running. Concept remains the same. You're giving energy forward, as opposed to taking drugs where you're removing energy and feeling worse afterwards. So the end game here is really trying to remove short-term highs and replacing it with long-term calms. Calm highs, good highs, happy highs. So removing coping mechanisms is at first very painful, and you will likely fall back into other mechanisms. For example, I found this image online which shows various causes and symptoms of addiction. So if you're like me, you'll remove one addiction only to retreat into another coping mechanism. So you'll stop drinking and you find you can't go 5 minutes without checking your emails or go on Twitter or TikTok or some crap. So every time you feel that urge, you've got to stop and check in on your feelings. How are you feeling? Trigger happy? Frustrated? Irritable, scared, bored? Something is going on. And unfortunately, you've got to remove every coping mechanism before you can really do the hard work of working out the root cause. And the only way to do that is to identify and remove negative stimulus, which we'll cover in part 2. See you soon.